When I was about 17 years old, I was just finished with high school, and every weekend I was getting invited to different house parties or going out drinking someplace or another. And at the time, I already had the sort of clarity of where I wanted to go in life in terms of with my rugby, but for some reason I just couldn't avoid going out every weekend. I knew that in order to achieve the goal that I wanted to achieve, to win a Rugby World Cup, something so grand that not many people get to do, that going out and drinking every Saturday night and staying up late and waking up, not doing anything on the Sunday, not being productive, I knew that that's not going to be a productive way for me to go forward. But for some reason I just kept doing it. I just kept getting invited, and I was like, yeah, I'll go, I've got nothing on tonight. I didn't have any sort of willpower or discipline against that. I wasn't able to resist the pleasure of going out every weekend. The funny thing is, at the time I was still training every week, training very hard, playing rugby, just doing what I was supposed to do during the week. But it's always kind of hindered at the start of the week on a Monday when I've still got a little bit of a hangover from the Saturday night. And this continued all the way through the summer. I was going out every weekend. Then it got to university, which I moved up to Glasgow, and it continued exactly how it had before. Only this time it was a little bit more extreme because I didn't have to come home to my parents' house, so I was drinking more, I was staying out later. I knew I could come in at whatever time I wanted to, bring in whoever I want back to the flat, having parties in my house. And this continued all the way until about my 18th birthday of every single weekend. And on my 18th birthday I went back down to the borders, and I went out and seen a few pals, got drunk, and I was at one pub and decided that I wanted to go to the other one that was a little bit down the road. So I ran there, blind drunk. I tripped up and hit my head on the curb and split my head open. If I go like this, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a scar across my eyebrow that goes down like that. I don't know if you can see that or not. But essentially what happened is I woke up, I found myself being moved into the ambulance. The nurse, the paramedic, asked me to phone somebody to say that I'm okay and everything. So I phoned my mum. I get taken to the hospital. I get stitched up. My parents both come, obviously very concerned, rightfully so. And they just the weird sort of energy that when I get home the next day, obviously they speak to me, and this realization kind of dawns upon me of this is not what I'm supposed to be doing if I want to achieve the goal that I said I am. I'm sitting there, I'm telling myself, I want to win a Rugby World Cup, I want to be the best rugby player in the world, but I'm still going out doing stupid shit every single weekend, just like everybody else is. And everybody else that I'm with, they're maybe not so attuned to what my goals are, they're maybe not as aware as just how much I want to achieve this. So for them it's, oh, get Trystan, he'll come, because they know I'll come out every weekend anyway. There was no sort of thinking, oh, Trystan might not want to come because he's focused on this and that. It was always just, oh, see if Trystan's around, then I'll go out, end up drunk. You know, it's a trap that a lot of young men get into, and for me it comes from a lack of real conviction towards the goals and real understanding, which is what I want to try and add to the picture here. I mean, after this period when I split my eye open, I still had about, I think it was October, and then lockdown was the following March, so it was about 6 months. I think I went out maybe 4 or 5 times still in that few months, but every time I would go out, I'd be sitting there in the club, it would be like 1 a.m, and I'm sitting on my own in the corner just thinking, what the fuck am I still doing here? This is so pointless. All I could think about was just my goals and how I'm just letting myself down so much, and I'm sitting there with some multicoloured drink in a bottle or in a cup, just thinking, well, I'm just wasting my time. There's no point in me actually being here. And yet still, I would still be here. From that point on, March, when lockdown hit, obviously there was no option for me to go out and drink anymore, so I was literally just forced to actually face my goals, face what I said I'm going to do. Am I bullshitting myself saying I want to work hard and achieve something great? Or am I actually just wanting the clout that comes with that? And that from lockdown, I would literally be training all day. I would go out, I would train, then I would go on hikes in the evening. At one point I was training fully for 6 days a week. On my rest days from my scheduled training during that time, I was going on 5k runs as active recovery. It wasn't active recovery, I was going out to try and get a PB every single time. And for about 3 weeks in a row, every time I went out and ran a 5k, I was getting a better time every single time. And I would have a day off on the Sunday, just do some stretching, recover. And it made me realise that what I'm looking to achieve, I cannot be going out and doing what everybody else is doing. I can't continue going out every single weekend. And the real test started coming on the first day when the pubs opened up. It was a Friday night, I remember very well. I remember seeing everyone's Instagram stories and Snapchat stories and whatnot. Everyone's in the pub, but where was I? I wasn't in the pub this night. I was in my garage, lying on the cold concrete floor in my garage. I think I had a dirty towel lying underneath me, and I was doing crunches, and I was counting the crunches from when they started hurting, and I stopped counting the crunches when I couldn't continue doing another crunch. I was literally putting myself into spasms of pain on the floor, on a cold concrete floor, on a Friday night in my parents' garage, doing crunches, obsessing over my goals, and realising how much work I've put in so far is nowhere near the amount of work that I need to put in the future. Since that point, that was obviously about 3 years ago now. From that point onwards, I've went out a few times, don't get me wrong, there's been a few times where I slipped and I shouldn't have went out. I just went out because it was something to do and I was bored and I wasn't focusing on my goal as much as I should have been. But I'm at a point now where I've drank one time in the last 2.5 months, and I don't intend to drink again until November, which is the end of my rugby season. Now, if you were to take me back 3 years ago, even during that lockdown, I was still having like a glass of whiskey at the weekend. But now at the weekend, I'm literally just sitting and drinking sparkling water, eating yogurt with fruit in it, stretching, playing golf. Drinking is so far from my purpose and my goal. You'll obviously seen the title of this video, so you'll be wondering, why is this story even important? Why is Trystan telling me about when he was 17 going out every weekend like pretty much every other 17-year-old in Scotland? And the reason for that is because there are two skills in the world that if you can master them, you can have anything you want. And I feel like I've made a lot of ground in these two skills to be able to try and educate other people who may be in a similar scenario as maybe what I'm in now, or in a similar scenario to what I was in when I was 17. And these two skills, you probably heard them because everyone that's successful, everyone's ever achieved anything has mentioned these skills, and that's discipline and willpower. It's like the level up from motivation. Everyone can be motivated at some point in their life. You can have one day of motivation every few months or so, and you get some stuff done. But there's a level above that. If you want to work hard every single day and achieve something truly remarkable and truly great, then you need to be able to have discipline and you have to have willpower. And I'll briefly explain the difference between the two, because they can oftentimes get mashed together and there's a bit of confusion around that. Discipline, firstly, is when you wake up every single day and you do what you need to do regardless of how you feel. You do it anyway. It's not because you feel like doing it, it's because you know you have to do it. That's discipline. You do it anyway. So willpower is the inverse of that. Willpower is not doing what you feel like doing because you know you shouldn't be doing it. That's the not going out drinking. That's the not masturbating. That's the not cheating on your girlfriend. That's willpower. And that's an important clarification to make, because like I say, they always get mixed in together, but there is a difference, and this is what's so beautiful, and why I mention them both in the same video, even though this is a video about willpower, is because without discipline, willpower becomes infinitely more difficult. And let me explain. I've kind of diluted everything down to having 4 main elements of willpower. And from these 4 elements, for each of them, when you break them down, you need to have an element of discipline about you. Now, discipline can be quite elusive. It's a blasé word. Everyone throws out the word discipline. Oh, you need to be disciplined. You need to get some discipline. Do this, do that. And there's a very short, simple way that I've been able to be disciplined for so long. Like, even when when I was 17, I was still training all the time, and I was training very hard. And even before then, I've been doing this level of training, I'll say leveling up the intensity and the skill level, but I've been doing this since I was about 14, going to the gym all the time when I'm supposed to go to the gym. I've been disciplined since I was about 14 in terms of working out. I mean, you don't get that by accident, do you? You don't get that from ill discipline. But essentially, in order to actually be disciplined, you need to have some sort of higher purpose. You can't just accidentally be disciplined. So for me, the best way to get this discipline is to have a higher purpose, a grand goal that is something that serves other people. And a simple model for this is to take something you already enjoy, that you believe makes you a better person in society. You practice, you learn this deeply every single day, and then you figure out a way to teach this to make society a better place as a whole. Now that is essentially what most higher purposes boil down to. For example, for me, rugby. I like to play rugby. I enjoy it. It feels like it makes me a better person. I learn a lot of good character traits, a lot of humility that you get from rugby, getting smacked about. It really teaches you something about what it is to be a human being. And then I take this, I practice it deeply, I learn it deeply, and then I go on to teach the lessons that I've learned in rugby, and I hope to inspire other people to do the same within their life, whether it's going to be rugby or whether it's going to be business or whether it's some sort of charitable organisation that you create, but that essentially all boils to that same essence of learn something, practice it, teach it. It comes down to that. So with that, I'll take you on to the 4 parts of building willpower. And the first one is sleep. Now, sleep is probably one of the most important aspects of your life. It's when your hormones regenerate the most, your testosterone, your growth hormone, that's when it's all developed at its highest volume, is when you're asleep. Because it allows your body to rest and it allows your hormones to start producing. So firstly, in order to get your sleep really well, we're going to speak about your sleep environment. You want it to be dark. Don't be one of these creepy bastards that sleeps with your curtains open. I mean, I don't like people who sleep with the curtains open. I don't know if there's something maybe going on in there, but it's not for me, and it doesn't work on a biological example. If we look back to our cavemen, they slept in dark, cool caves. So if you can recreate a dark, cool cave, your curtains closed, ideally, obviously not everyone's going to have access to air conditioning, but about 18 degrees Celsius is what they recommend for optimal sleep conditions. Obviously you can adjust it slightly, but it's so that you're not too warm but not too cold. So think about what that ideal temperature is for you. Think about the clothes that you're wearing. How thick is it? How thick is your duvet or your blanket that you're sleeping under? That's all going to lead to you having a better night's sleep. And the better night's sleep you have, the better you can produce testosterone, the better you can produce growth hormone, gives you energy throughout the day. And this is important. I'll come on to it later about why all these different habits combine and allow you to have better willpower and decide not to go out and drink, to decide not to masturbate, for example. Another part, probably the final part I'll mention about your sleep environment, is to have clean sheets. Now everyone knows that day when your mum's put clean sheets on your bed, you know you're going to sleep like a baby that night. It's having that clean smell and the clean feel of the sheets. So make sure you're washing your sheets on a regular basis so that you can have the clean bed in a dark, cool room. And then, like, if you don't believe me, just try it and see how much better you sleep. Now, what also comes into sleep is what you do during the day. So for me, I know the best sleep I have is when I have a really productive day. So I exercise, I do the work I'm supposed to do, and then I hydrate properly throughout the day, and not too much before bed. If you hydrate loads before bed, you just end up waking up in the night pissing or waking up too early, and then you can't get back to sleep. Because say it's, for example, the other morning I woke up my alarm was 5 a.m, but I woke up at 4:34 needing a piss. So I went for a piss and realised, well, I'm not going to get 25 minutes of sleep, so I just stayed up. But that's an example of make sure you hydrate optimally throughout the day and evenly, and then you taper off as you go into bed. Obviously it's difficult some nights. For me, I play rugby, maybe a Friday night game, 7:30 kickoff, so I'm drinking loads of water even after the game when it finishes at 9:30, 10 o'clock. But that's just, on a normal day, I would suggest maybe not drinking water past 6 p.m. or so, or at least tapering it down so that you're not waking up all the time needing to go to the toilet. Similar to hydration, you want to optimize your caffeine use. Now, I don't tend to want to drink caffeine after midday, unless, again, like I'm playing a game of rugby. Even sometimes I won't have a lunchtime coffee, just because I want to make sure that I'm in a point where the caffeine's all tapered off, because caffeine is quite a long half-life. So I want to make sure it's all tapered off, so when I go to sleep I'm not just sitting there with energy. But I have noticed as well that even if I have caffeine slightly later in the day, as long as I'm using that energy productively, then it doesn't tend to affect my sleep as much. But if you're just drinking caffeine, then you're not doing anything with that energy, then it tends to be very difficult for you to get to sleep. Just a personal experience that I've had. And then similar for nutrition, don't eat too close to bed. I'd give it a couple of hours, just so, because your body kind of heats up when it's digesting the food, especially if it's like a steak or something that's like your body needs to really work to burn the calories, to digest the food. So if you leave a little window before you go to bed that you don't eat too late, then it allows your body to be at that optimal temperature so you can sleep a little bit better. And then the final point on sleep, 7 to 9 hours is roughly the times you want to actually be fully asleep. But in order to get that amount of sleep, you need to be in bed for about 9 to 10 hours, because it compensates for the time it takes you to fall asleep and then the time that you lie awake, or maybe you wake up in the middle of the night, just so you actually get the full amount of hours that you get in. Because everyone knows that, like, if you take a sleep tracking app right now and you go to bed for 8 hours, say 10 until 6 a.m, and you wake up and you look at the time, it'll say time in bed 8 hours, but it'll say asleep 6 hours 35 minutes. So you need to have a slightly longer sleep window to allow you to actually get that full stretch of sleep. Point number 2, hydration. Now, a lot of what hydration is, for me, this could be bro science, I could be completely wrong, but when you're hydrated, your blood can flow easier. Think about your, like a thick soup. When you add more water to it, it's less viscous, it moves easier, it flows easier. So for me, that's the same as if I don't drink enough water, my blood flow's not going to be the same. So I'm going to get brain fogs, I'm going to get muscle cramps, because the blood's not going to be as evenly distributed around my body. Now, obviously for different people, different body weights, it's going to be a different amount you need to drink, and the recommended amount is 35 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight. So it's similar to how protein is about 2 kilograms per body weight a day. No, 2 grams, yeah, did I say that right? 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for hydration, I would suggest 35 milliliters per 100 mil. I'm 95 kilograms, so that's about 3.3 liters of water. On days that you exercise, you should always drink more water, because you're going to lose that fluids through perspiring. So you need to make sure you top that liquids back up, so continually function at an optimal level. Just the final sort of nuanced point is, if you can afford it, try to avoid tap water, because tap water, you can do the research yourself and just search to verify what I'm saying here, but essentially the tap water that we get provided to us, it's all the toilet water and all the shower water is all filtered in the same filtration system. So when the water comes back, obviously it'll be a lot cleaner, but there's certain hormones in the water, estrogenics, which can affect your testosterone levels, that remain in the water that can't be filtered out properly. So the best way for you to hydrate is through bottled water, ideally in glass, because plastic's not very good for you as well. It's also got estrogenics in it. So if you can drink bottled water only, obviously be ideal, but I know obviously everyone can't afford that. So when you can, drink bottled water, but in general, as long as you're getting 35 milliliters of water per day, that's a great start if you're not already doing that. And then you want to level up the hydration. You kind of want to master the skill of hydration. So you want to go from not drinking enough water and then to drink enough water but it's tap water, and then you want to go to bottled water where it's out of plastic bottle, and then bottled water out of a glass bottle. And then you could even get these, I think it's a reverse osmosis filter, which can get rid of the hormones and stuff in the water, so you can properly filter your water so it's as clean as possible. I mean, think about the purity of a highland stream. There's one time I went, well, not one, I've done this many times, but I go out into the highlands and I drink straight from like a mountain stream. You just feel instantly more hydrated just from like half a litre of water than you would if you drank 1.5 litres of tap water. That's all I really have to say about hydration. So we'll move on now, which is, it's paired very closely with hydration, but nutrition. Now in terms of nutrition, I like to lay out a very simple blueprint. Essentially, you just want to eat whole foods. If you don't know what a whole food is, it's essentially if you pick up the packet of food and you look at the ingredients, if it has more than one item, it's probably not whole food. If it has these names that you don't understand, like sodium hydrochloride and xanthan gum or whatever, if it says that on it, it's probably not going to be as good for you as just eating a steak, because a steak is just beef, an egg is just egg, rice is just rice, potatoes are just potatoes. And that's one thing you need to actually watch out for, is if you're having chips thinking, oh, it's just potatoes, you're wrong, because if you look at the ingredients, especially like oven chips, it'll always say potatoes plus like xanthan gum plus sunflower oil. Avoid that. Stick with just whole foods. Cook with butter, salted butter if you can, just for the extra electrolytes and everything in there. And make sure you're eating enough protein. Now, we already spoke in hydration, you want 35 mils per kilogram body weight. In terms of protein, if you want to be, especially if you're training a lot, which you should be, you want to be having about 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Let's just make sure, for me, I try and aim for about 200. I know it's going to be 190, I'm 95 kilograms, but I try and aim for 200 grams of protein a day. It just makes sure that my muscles are recovering. I've got everything I need for the cells in my body to be recovering. And also what's really important, and not a lot of people will speak about this when you're first getting into working out, but you do not realise just how important fats are. So I'm talking about fats from meats, from fish, from eggs, avocados, nuts. All of these fats are extremely important into how you're going to use this to level up your willpower, because this increases your testosterone, so it increases the amount of energy you have. And when you're really alert, I'll explain later on, it's easier to have willpower when you're actually switched on and you've got testosterone. It makes you a lot sharper. Your brain just functions smoother, everything just becomes better. It's like the lights become brighter, like in Limitless when he takes the pill and he can just see all the colours really clearly. It's basically the same as that. So high protein, high fat, whole foods is, for me, you could argue, don't eat too much food, but with whole foods it's very difficult to actually overeat, because if you're only eating whole foods, they already fill you up more than necessary, and most of the time when you overeat, it's junk food anyway, because whole foods, you don't get that same sort of, that really high dopamine drive craving for the foods like you do with like a pizza or just in general. So now that we've covered nutrition, we'll go on to the fourth and final point, which is fulfilling work. Now, we already spoke briefly when we mentioned willpower and discipline. With the discipline, obviously, if you're working towards your higher purpose, if you keep doing this fulfilling work, you'll realise how much enjoyment you actually get out of it, because it's fulfilling, it's deeply fulfilling. If you're constantly doing fulfilling work and your body's fueled properly, it's hydrated properly, and you're sleeping properly, recovering properly, this takes us on to the final part of the video. In order to increase your willpower, if you do all 4 of these elements, nothing else really looks attractive enough for you to be tempted into doing it. For example, right now, I'm abstaining from alcohol because the work that I'm doing fulfills me enough, and I'm eating healthy enough, and I'm sleeping well enough, and I'm hydrating well enough, and I feel amazing. I don't feel like alcohol would make me feel better. I feel like alcohol would make me feel worse. So from that point onwards, when everything is right and you're being disciplined and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, the only option is to continue doing that, because it feels better than feeling drunk. If you don't believe me, try it first for 2 months, and then tell me after the 2 months of eating healthy every day, working out all the time, doing fulfilling work, hydrating properly, sleeping well every night, and if you can convince me that feeling drunk feels better than all of that, stop watching my videos, because I've done both sides of it, and I've done it many times. I've done massive periods of discipline and great willpower, and then I've went back into degeneracy, and then I've went back out again. And every single time when I come back out and I'm doing all the good things, that is when I feel the best. That's when I feel I'm at peak human performance. That is literally the best feeling in the world. The final thing I'll mention in this video, so now you know how to have the willpower. If you want to read a little bit more about work that I've done, then if you click the link in the description, I've got a library of a few different ebooks. I've got some stories from my life and lessons I've learned from the gym. You want to go down there, check them out. And as well, if you found this video extremely useful and you feel like you've learned something about willpower, about discipline, how to actually start opening up your reality to achieve whatever you want, share this with some friends, let them know, and leave a comment, subscribe. You know all the YouTube algorithm pish. Yeah, until next time then, I'll see you, well, next Friday I guess. Have a good weekend.